OpenSUSE SUSE Linux with Stefan Behlert and Mr. Jan Weber.
Hello everybody. Good to see so many here. You see the title here, OpenSUSE and SLE. I was asked by some, what does SLE mean? It stands for the SUSE Linux Enterprise, which is a complete universe of products. We will talk a little bit about that. But before we start, let me ask one question to the audience. Who of you is using OpenSUSE? Raise your hands. Okay. Who of you is using an enterprise product? Okay. And who has heard at least that there are enterprise products? Great.
By now, this should be all of you.
So, what we will talk about today is a little bit about the OpenSUSE and the enterprise universe. We will talk about similarities and differences. And we will give you at least a few spotlights or highlights on the upcoming Codebase 12 that we are working on. Given the amount of time, it will be rather short. What we can tell you here, especially since we are in the planning phase, but during all of our presentation from Jan and me, feel free to raise your hand if you have a question. It's more important for us to have a dialogue with you and to answer your questions than go through all of the slides, because the time is short and we want to use it. I have with me Jan, who is a product manager for the enterprise products. He's responsible for several of those. I'm responsible as a project manager. And together we hope we can share a little bit of light to that. So.
And with this, Stefan already mentioned it, SLE is a whole bunch of products, a whole family. You can see our whole product portfolio that SUSE has on this slide. The most important parts that are belonging to SLE are our server for System Z, our server for SAP applications, our POS solution that we have. We have a real-time extension for real-time calculations, for real time-critical operations. We have the high availability extension, including also a geo-clustering extension for high available setups for real mission-critical systems where you want to have a failover scenario and stuff like that. We got our server with expanded support for migration purposes away from CentOS or Red Hat Enterprise Linux. We got a long-term service pack support in case you need to run a service pack of our SUSE Linux Enterprise server for a longer period of time. And we got our virtualization area with our virtual machine driver pack, which is mostly for Hyper-V and Windows, and our server for VMware. And also we're in the cloud space, which also somehow belongs to the SUSE Linux Enterprise brand, although those products are not named with SUSE Linux Enterprise, except for our server offering on Amazon EC2. But we got our cloud offering, we got SUSE Manager, SUSE Studio for the management part, so building appliances with SUSE Studio, deploying it to SUSE Cloud, managing those during the life cycle with SUSE Manager, or also deploying data centers with SUSE Manager. And last but not least, we got SUSE Linux Enterprise Desktop and our LibreOffice offerings, and this is our complete product portfolio which delivers everything you need for your enterprise needs.
So, one thing you may have missed on that slide is OpenSUSE, because it's not an enterprise product itself, it's more of a project. OpenSUSE itself, I'm sure most of you are familiar with that, can be divided in several parts. So you have the factory, where you have the current development tree, where everything that is new and shiny is done. Then, of course, you have the OpenSUSE release itself, which is stable, comes out every 8 months, gets updated, and is supported for at least 2 releases, and a little bit of overlap, so 18-month cycle. And for those who want to have a little bit of more, well, let's say, support or stability for a longer time, you have the OpenSUSE Tumbleweed that which is based on the latest release and gets new software updates. That's the OpenSUSE project. On the enterprise side, this looks, from the lifecycle view, a little bit different.
Yeah, we're firstly approaching the major difference between OpenSUSE and SLE. Our SLE products have a life cycle which is up to 10 years with our expanded or with our long-term service pack support offerings. Within these 10 years, what we guarantee is API and ABI stability for core components like the kernel, basic libraries, and things like that, so that really enterprises can rely on SLE to be a base for their mission-critical applications, for their enterprise applications that they want to run for a longer period of time. They deploy it once, they want to run it for the next 5 years without taking too much care about updating, migrations of the systems, updates of their application stacks to run for a longer period of time. That's why we have this long life cycle with 7 years of general support split out into 5 releases typically. We got 1 general availability, the first release, and we got 4 service packs. A rough estimate is that roughly every 4 years we are bringing out a new major release. So we will be talking a little bit about SLE 12, which will arrive somewhere next year. This will be our next major release that we bring out. We've just released Service Pack 3 for SUSE Linux Enterprise 11, and roughly every 18 months we provide a new service pack. And as with OpenSUSE, we also have a small overlap between those releases with 6 months compared to, I think it was 18 months or something like that, that we have with OpenSUSE. But we offer the long-term service pack support offering to extend this for up to 3 years. And with this, back to Stefan, who will talk a little bit about OpenSUSE and SLE collaboration.
Well, no designer was spared, as you can see, to put that into a fancy graphic. So if you look how it will develop now, we are here with OpenSUSE, and OpenSUSE will be used as a base for what we will produce on the enterprise in code 12. You see it here. So at one point in time, we will split off the current OpenSUSE code, and we will use that to harden it, to add additional stuff that you will not find in OpenSUSE because it's either proprietary or because it's for machines where OpenSUSE is really not targeted for. Think of System Set and a few other. And then at one point in time, we will have a SLE 12 GA, where it will be generally available, when people will actually start testing it, using it. A lot of the bug fixes that we do for SLE 12 at that point in time will go back to 13.2, and the other way around. What the OpenSUSE project does and develops and fixes will also, if it applies, go back into the code 12 base, so that you see both projects profit from each other and from the various QA that is done. Because people using OpenSUSE are using other hardware and sometimes have different scenario of usage than the enterprise users. Different bugs are found at different point in time, and different functionalities are needed and required. And we try to have a good synergy between those. And months after months, we start at one point to work on the first service pack, which then will be based on SLE 12 GA, getting everything from that code base, plus a few additions maybe from what OpenSUSE has shipped. That could mean, for example, a new package or bug fixes or anything else. And of course, it will also all go back into the various code streams, at least for a certain amount of time. A good example where we have a lot of synergies, for example, is Firefox or LibreOffice, where we do a lot of work spending on that to get it hardened to fix bugs. And we try to use the same versions to a certain degree on both of these code streams, With Sleeve, for example, it's a little bit different because we use the long-term supported version of Firefox, which is always a little bit behind. But for LibreOffice, for example, we are always on the latest stable version. And we try to have them on both projects at the same time.
That's still your slide, but I can do it as well.
So, I've talked a little bit about the similarities. And we have mentioned a little bit of differences because it would be awkward to have no differences. So you see the life cycle, we have talked about that, which is much more longer for the enterprise products than for the OpenSUSE project. Of course, the package selection on media is quite different. OpenSUSE tries to avoid everything that's proprietary or closed software. On the enterprise, this is not possible. I give you a famous example. AcroRead, for example, is one thing that in the enterprises is needed. Well, you could always say there are open source alternatives, but for some of the higher sophisticated presentations that I have seen coming from business enterprises that were created with the Microsoft product, you cannot use the alternatives. You have to use AcroRead. Unfortunately, but it's unfortunately currently how we have to do it. Of course, there's a difference in how we partition, in how we install. The installation workflow is quite different. If you have iSCSI or InfiniBand, you have to do it different. If you have remote storages attached, these are scenarios that we cover with the installation workflow, as well as a few specific ones that are required on the enterprise. The biggest difference you can see is in the architectures. You see here for OpenSUSE, you have currently 3, the Intel ones, the 32 and 64-bit. The ARM architecture, you have heard the presentation right before that one. For the enterprise, we currently have at least the Intel ones, the 32 and the 64-bit, but also we have System C and Tanium and the Power architecture, which are mostly used in the enterprise area. I doubted that anybody from you has a System C at home, so having that supported with OpenSUSE would not only be difficult, as it would require a lot of packages to be adapted, but also not necessarily useful.
Yeah, and besides those differences, what we also do with SLE is we do something which we call enterprise hardening. When I talked about the life cycle, I said we guarantee for API and ABI stability over the life cycle of the product. This is what we understand as enterprise hardening. So we are not always latest and greatest, or not even latest stable at some point in time with our enterprise product, because we need to keep this backward compatibility for our enterprise customers who rely on a system that is stable and running for a longer period of time. Besides that, it's of course including partner testing. So partners like IBM, HP, you name them, are testing the enterprise releases as well. And there is the certification for hardware and software, because if you want to use something in the enterprise, you want to make sure it works. So our hardware partners are certifying SUSE Linux Enterprise with their server machines, even with desktop machines as well. ISVs, so software vendors, are certifying their applications to run on SUSE Linux Enterprise so that they can be used in the data center. Software partners like SAP and all of those are certifying their applications on SUSE Linux Enterprise to run on it, where they know, okay, we guarantee a stability in terms of API and ABI. If they certify it once, it will not break for the life cycle of one major release. They can rely on the stability of it. They can rely on us providing support for it for the next 7 years. So it's a good foundation for their enterprise applications. And besides all of this, we do support it. So you get level 1, level 2 support if you have a support contract. You get level 3 support for the packages. So we guarantee that we will do our best to fix bugs that you as a customer find in our products. so that you can still use it, that you can still run it. This is something where we highly differentiate between the enterprise products and the community products or the community distributions, where a result could be, well, grab the latest stable version of this library or of this application. It has it fixed. In the enterprise, due to the long life cycle, due to this ABI and API compatibility, we can't just say, grab the latest. We fix things there, and we provide support for it up to 24/7. And with this, Stefan will talk a little bit about green apples.
We have talked a lot about differences. Well, apples are green, at least most of them. And we have a lot of tools that we use in both of the projects, and that get, of course, enhancements and bug fixes and features, depending not only on the requirements of OpenSUSE, but also of those of the enterprise products. So one of them is the build service. We have a slight difference here between the OpenSUSE build service and the enterprise build service. We use two different instances, simply to not block the building of one of the projects or products through the other one. So if you see outages there, we are not responsible from the enterprise side. But of course, we find in that way also a lot of things where we have requirements and feature requests. And I think there's a talk about the Open Build service later, so you can hear a lot of that from them. And a big thank you here also to the build service team who is present here, because they do a great job in doing all our crazy requirements. So we use also OpenQA. There's also a workshop, I think, or a presentation at least, I think on Sunday, about OpenQA. We use it to test what we produce, the images, to see in that. We have a little bit of special tests on top of that, but we rely a lot on the OpenQA framework. And of course, we have Bugzilla. So those of you who have used the Bugzilla from novel.com, you can also see there the enterprise products. The bugs there are not open to everybody. That's the major difference, simply because in some cases we have confidential information there, NDA information from the partners, from the hardware vendors, which we are not allowed to publish to everybody. One of the things that should be clear is that OpenSUSE is treated by us as the base and the upstream for the enterprise products. So if you remember, you as OpenSUSE have upstream projects, devil projects that are used to create the OpenSUSE projects. For us in the enterprise world, we use OpenSUSE as the upstream project. We have no devil projects itself. We have a dedicated development project where everything goes in. But the only devil project in that case would be for us the OpenSUSE factory. And as we have already mentioned, we have the same code base, but the word later, you see it again here. So whenever we do anything, we have to rely on upstream, which is OpenSUSE, which of course is sometimes positive and sometimes a problem, because we face the same problems. Upstream is making decisions that are not necessarily in the interest of the projects. You see that in OpenSUSE. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with systemd, for example, or ButterFS, or anything else that came from upstream in the last few months or years. Not everybody agrees on that, but it's coming from upstream, and you have to try to make the best out of that. The same is true for the enterprise product. When we now come to code 12, we are using OpenSUSE as upstream, and not every decision there may be in our interest, and we have to cope with that. So we try, on one thing, to live with the decisions there. On the other side, we try to influence upstream like OpenSUSE does it and the community does it. if something is not good for OpenSUSE, you have to decide if you use it or not. Same is true for the enterprise products. But of course, what is good and what is bad, it's always a matter of opinion, and it differs a lot from the people. So if I would ask here who likes systemd, I would get a few hands. I'm pretty sure if I ask who dislike it, I would get a few hands. The reasons vary, and we face the same problems here. So we're in the same boat, and that makes it sometimes tricky. Now, time's running up, so I try to speed a little bit up. I have 2 slides left here. We have talked a little bit about differences, about similarities. Let's talk a little bit about concrete things that we plan for Code 12. I cannot tell you everything that we do, simply because we're currently in the planning phase. We are looking at the feature requests from partners, from customers, from developers. We are looking at Upstream, what they have, what is good, what is not ideal for the enterprise, what we want to change and what we would like to see in OpenSUSE, and where we can help OpenSUSE. So 3 major pain points that we currently see. You can see it here on the slides, are systemd, Btrfs, and the UEFI secure boot issues. Systemd, well, you can like it or you can hate it. I think it will not go away on the short term. I don't see currently a big alternative to that. It has some advantages that nobody can deny. There are also quite some disadvantages where we are now starting to look closely into. One of them is, for example, the systemd init script integration, which is less than ideal currently for systemd. Those of you familiar with certifications, systemd has a big problem with the LSB certification due to that. And for the enterprise, that's something that's very important that we need. So we will look and see that we get that integration done. That's something that we will do on that. Btrfs, I would like to say a lot of positive things about that, and it has a lot of positive things. And in that room here, after the lunch break, you will have Arvin telling a lot about Snapper, LVM, and Btrfs. I recommend to join that because it will show a lot of the positive things that Btrfs has. But unfortunately, there are also a few disadvantages. I think it was yesterday, a colleague who had to reinstall because of a problem with Btrfs. That's something that is not acceptable, and where we on the enterprise side will work quite a lot and put a lot of effort into it to stabilize it and hopefully get also a stable and very good working Btrfs for OpenSUSE. I'm not sure, or I'm pretty sure that it will not be done in the 13.1 time frame, but for 13.2 we want to have Btrfs in a very good shape also on OpenSUSE. And that's something where we try to help with all the manpower that we can get from the enterprise world, where you have also QA from the partners, from the big hardware vendors, and you get scenario testing that you would otherwise not get. UEFI secure boot. I will refer to it to secure boot in the following because otherwise I break my tongue. You have seen it in OpenSUSE, it's working in principle. There are a few cases where we need some refinements, where it would be better to have it more smoothly. For example, if you want to do some kernel debugging with kdump and kexec scenarios. There we are a little bit behind, and we hope that we will get that done in a short amount of time. All of this will see a lot of engineering work coming from the enterprise engineers in SUSE. But of course, we need you as community also to help us testing on that. Because you have scenarios and configurations for Btrfs that we most likely never have thought about, which you can test, which you can look at, or where you can report bugs or say it works. You have hardware for secure boot that we have never seen. So there I would like you to ask kindly to help us, to have patience also a little bit with us. We try our best. We are not perfect. We are humans. We try to change that, the perfect part, not the human part, and see that we get everything done in a smooth way. So we try here our best to help. Two other things that we will do. Do you want to talk about the S2?
No, that's your part still.
You have seen already on the mailing list, we have YaST2 now in Ruby. We try, or we work on converting YaST2 to Ruby. Our goal is here to have it better maintainable, to make it, to make it possible for a wider audience to code for it, to adapt it, to patch it. You can say a lot about YCP. I personally am not a big fan of it because I don't speak that language. So we hope that this will help, and we would like you to take a look at that and see if you can improve here and help us a little bit in testing and getting everything right. And one thing that you may see sooner or later is the new installer workflow and the new installer. Not for 13.1, that's for sure, because that will require major work that we have started now. We want to clean up the workflow a little bit. We want to adjust a little bit to nowadays needs. And you will see it, I guess, currently after 13.1 is out. We plan to have that finished for SLE 12. And I encourage you here to look out for that. And once you see the first code for that coming, to give it a try and let us know where it still suffers and needs improvement.
And with this, we're almost at the end, but there's one thing that we should talk about, and this is join the Geeko. SUSE is hiring, so if you're looking for a new opportunity, we're hiring globally. Either talk to us to get more information how it is to work for SUSE. You can talk to anyone who is here who is working for SUSE to get some impression. Check out our careers page. We got a lot of openings worldwide. We got a lot of openings in virtual offices, so wherever you are, you can work for us. Or contact us directly at jobs.suse.com with your CV and what you're thinking about doing, what you might want to do. And really, least, try both. Try OpenSUSE, try SUSE Linux Enterprise. If you want, we got some evaluation DVDs with us so that you can take it home. Our latest service pack, or not the latest, but service pack 2, but that's okay. Try it, have a look at it, and if you have feedback for us on those SLE 12 topics that we've raised, if you want to complain about BetterFS, or you want to embrace systemd, or you think UEFI secure boot is the greatest thing since cutting bread or something like that, feel free to talk to us, reach out to us. And if you have questions, ask now. We got 30 seconds left.
And of course, we will be at the booth later and also on the conference available.
I will get some gifts for you.
And since we are late, be careful when he throws it.
I know what I'm doing. Actually not, okay.
He's a product manager. He knows what he's doing, you see?
I know what I'm doing.
You should aim.
I should aim more upwards, but I don't want to hit the projector. Or any people sitting in the room.
And if you're wondering why we have SP2 with us and not SP3, that's simply because SP3 is so fresh that no images are being pressed until now, no CDs, no media. But you can download it and also update that version. Any questions? Yeah.
In your presentation, you've mentioned other open source projects which are not part of OpenSUSE or SUSE Linux Enterprise. For example, LibreOffice. What are you doing with those? What do we gain, for example, if we purchase LibreOffice subscription? Does it support other closed source formats, or we have just better support?
Well, we got support for LibreOffice, so if you have, we are selling support for LibreOffice, let's put it that way, as part of SUSE Linux Enterprise desktop or as part of the LibreOffice offering for Windows. One of the key benefits compared to the regular LibreOffice is if you have an issue with any of the proprietary formats that we support and it's not displayed correctly, the formatting is off or anything like that, you can tell us and we will try to fix it. You can do the same with a document foundation, of course, but it can take some time there.
It's more immediate.
Sorry?
It's more immediate. I mean...
Yeah. You're paying us for it, so we are working on it.
One other thing is that when we release it for the enterprise products, especially SLED, we do some additional testing on it compared to the OpenSUSE version. So it could be that there are additional bug fixes. We try to incorporate a little bit of the stuff that we have found. And one of the biggest differences might be the fonts that are used by OpenSUSE and by SLE, because they differ a little bit. So LibreOffice on OpenSUSE, even if it has the same version number but a different build number, it could be slightly different on the bug size, and it could display some stuff a little bit different because of the fonts used and the embedded functionality that we have. But we try to have the same version on OpenSUSE as we have on SLE, give or take a few bug fixes. The bug fixes then wander into the OpenSUSE release later. We do not hide anything there. It's nothing that we use for ourselves. It's just a little bit different. And to encourage people to use the open source products, we also produce that version as a Windows version that you can use, though that's a slight difference there. More questions?
Hi. I wanted to ask, what's the market share, if I can say it like that, of OpenSUSE between the other distributions? And what are you going to do to increase it?
That's a tough question. I'm lucky that I have a product manager with me.
Okay, if we are talking about SLE, we're basically talking about two main players in the enterprise market. That's Red Hat and that's us. So you can assume some more or less 50-50 split there. It always highly depends on the region you're talking about. So if we are talking about Europe, or if we're talking about North America, if we're talking about South America, if we're talking about China or then Australia, so the whole APAC area, it highly different. There are high differences between the regions when it comes to the market share. Of course, what we do for SLE is we do marketing. We create new products. We try to talk to customers. That's what we do on the SLE side. On the OpenSUSE side, you need to talk to the OpenSUSE team. There are the wrong guys up on the stage at this point in time to talk about how do we embrace OpenSUSE more, how do we spread OpenSUSE in a wider way. I hope that somehow answers your question.
I heard some rumors Ralf Laxer will speak about that topic. So you might want to visit his keynote. I believe tomorrow, not sure.
Yes. Yes, I heard that rumors too. In some areas, we're even market leaders. China, for example, System C. So the target group for the enterprise and OpenSUSE is a different one. So it's comparing apples and pears. Both are nice to eat, but not everybody likes both of them. Any more questions? If not, you will hear a lot of things in the following talks. I've mentioned some. I hope you enjoyed the conference. And now, a little bit late, have a good lunch. Thanks.